There is a way to cut wood so it never warps. No chemical treatment, no kiln technology, no engineered lamination, just the angle of the blade against the log. Craftsmen knew this 200 years ago. The modern lumber aisle has no memory of it. We did not lose this technique because it failed. We lost it because it produces fewer boards per log. A cut that wastes wood cannot compete with one that maximizes volume, even when it produces lumber that self-destructs on the shelf. This is the story of quarter-sawn lumber, the dimensionally stable cut that built the finest furniture and instruments in history and was quietly replaced to protect profit margins. In the shadowed aisles of Winchester Cathedral, oak choir stalls stand as silent witnesses to a decision made over 8 centuries ago. The official building accounts from the early 1200s, written in a blend of Latin and English, record the selection of lignum radial, radial wood, reserved for the most demanding joinery. The phrase lignum sectum per quadrum appears alongside, describing timber that was split and then sawn to expose the growth rings nearly perpendicular to the board face. According to Dr. Robert Howard, whose dendrochronological studies have traced the felling of these oaks to the years around 1192, the choir stalls at Winchester are not only original, but their grain pattern confirms the medieval term was more than a linguistic artifact. They are quarter-sawn by deliberate choice, not accident. This technical awareness was not confined to ecclesiastical grandeur. The statutes of London's Crafters of Timber Guild, dating to the early 1400s, lay out fines for any craftsman who cut scaffolding treads in the wrong direction. The language is precise. Secere radialis, to saw radially, was mandatory, not optional. Such rules were written in Latin, glossed in Old French, and enforced with the weight of the guild behind them. Even the shipwrights who built England's naval power in the 17th century left a paper trail. A 1655 treatise on the art of shipbuilding, preserved in the National Maritime Museum, prescribes quarter-sawn oak for the keel and main frames, warning that only this grain orientation prevents the hogging and sagging that wrecks a vessel. The margin notes, written in German-influenced script, use the term quarter-holds, linking English practice to continental traditions. Modern science has confirmed what these builders intuited. Dendrochronology and microscopic grain analysis applied to the Winchester stalls and other medieval timbers reveal a consistent pattern. Boards intended for the most structurally or visually critical roles were almost always quarter-sawn. The choir stalls at Winchester, felled and worked between 1190 and 1195, display alternating bands of early and late wood parallel to the board face, a textbook marker of quarter-sawn oak. Conservation reports from the National Trust, unpublished but cited by Dr. Howard, include high-resolution micrographs that leave no doubt about the cut. These findings are echoed across Europe, from the tithe barns of Sweden to the instrument workshops of Leipzig, where the vocabulary of quarter-sawing, lignum radial, bois à coin, quartierholz spans languages and centuries. The evidence is unambiguous. Long before industrial sawmills and modern adhesives, craftsmen understood that the angle of the cut could grant wood a kind of immunity to time. Their statutes, treatises, and surviving work all point to a technical tradition that prized durability over yield, a tradition now nearly erased from the lumber aisle, but still visible in the grain of the oldest boards. In a controlled laboratory, the truth about wood's movement is not a matter of opinion or tradition. It is a matter of measurement. The U.S. Forest Products Laboratory, known for its rigorous standards, set out to quantify exactly how much more stable quarter-sawn wood really is. Their method was simple but decisive. They took a single log, cut it into matched sets of flat-sawn and quarter-sawn boards, then subjected them to identical cycles of humidity and drying. Each board's width was measured to the thousandth of an inch as it responded to swings in relative humidity. Bidul, from 30% up to 80%, and back again. The results, published in a series of technical bulletins and confirmed by independent studies, draw a clear line between two worlds. Flat-sawn oak boards, with their growth rings nearly parallel to the face, shrank by about 8% across their width, from green to oven dry. Quarter-sawn boards, with rings running nearly perpendicular, shrank just 4%, under the same conditions. This 2-to-1 ratio is not a fluke of species or climate. It is a direct consequence of wood's anisotropic structure, its tendency to contract far more along the tangential direction than the radial. The Forest Products Laboratory went further, cycling boards through repeated humidity swings to mimic real-world seasons. In these paired sample tests, quarter-sawn boards consistently moved 40 to 60% less across their width than flat-sawn boards from the same log. The numbers held for red oak, white oak, maple, and spruce. In practical terms, a flat-sawn red oak plank might contract or expand by 2.4 millimeters over a typical seasonal change, while its quarter-sawn counterpart moved just 1 millimeter. The difference was not just statistically significant, it was visible, even to the naked eye, in the time-lapse records of the experiment. The laboratory evidence leaves little room for debate. The stability advantage of quarter sawing is not a matter of tradition or marketing. It is a physical fact, confirmed by decades of controlled testing. Yet this proven method comes with a cost: fewer boards per log, more labor, and less yield for the mill. The numbers, hard as they are, set the stage for an economic decision that would reshape the modern lumber industry and redefine what builders and consumers came to accept as normal. In 1903, Gustav Stickley sat at his drafting table in upstate New York, reviewing the proofs for his new furniture catalog. The Craftsman furniture line, soon to be a signature of the American arts and crafts movement, announced its material plainly as quarter-sawn white oak. Page after page, illustrations highlighted the shimmering rayflex and even grain. Stickley's notes, now preserved at the Stickley Museum, insist that only quarter-sawn boards could produce tables and sideboards that would remain flat and true through decades of use. He was not alone in this conviction. Across the Atlantic, the Royal Navy's timber procurement ledgers, dated 1854, specified quarter-sawn oak for gun deck planking to prevent movement and distortion under service conditions. These were not luxury exceptions, but the norm for any application where failure was not an option. In the piano factories of New York and Vienna, the same rule applied. Steinway's 1905 procurement logs, still referenced in their historical materials handbook, list quarter-sawn Sitka spruce for every Model D soundboard. Bosendorfer's 1931 specification sheet stored in the Vienna archives calls for quarter-sawn alpine spruce, selected for its low knot density. The reason was not aesthetic. Quarter-sawn soundboards held their shape through years of seasonal swings, preserving the instrument's tone. The Leipzig instrument maker's ledger from 1682, written in a careful hand, describes Quartierholz, quarter wood, chosen to prevent warping. The reach of quarter sawing extended far beyond elite workshops. At the turn of the 20th century, Sears, Roebuck and Company delivered bedroom sets and dining tables to American homes by mail order. Their catalogs, printed in dense black type, labeled these pieces quarter-sawn oak as a selling point. The promise was simple: furniture that would not cup or twist in the heat of summer or the dry of winter. In trade journals and apprenticeship manuals, quarter-sawn was not a luxury, but a standard, a guarantee of performance. The Royal Navy's procurement language, Stickley's catalog copy, and the technical notes from Steinway's workshops all point to a single, shared understanding. When the stakes were high, when a warped board meant a failed instrument, a ruined table, or a compromised ship, quarter-sawn wood was the default choice. The catalogs and ledgers do not speak of yield or profit. They speak of reliability, of a material that could be trusted to hold its shape through time. In these records, quarter-sawing stands not as a forgotten art, but as the backbone of serious craftsmanship woven through the daily work of builders, joiners, and makers across continents. This was the golden age of quarter-sawn lumber, before the logic of volume began to rewrite the rules. A modern sawmill manager stands on the floor, watching logs roll in by the truckload. Each log is measured, scanned, and sliced with the relentless logic of yield. In this world, every inch of wood is a line on a spreadsheet, and the cut that delivers the most boards wins. Quarter sawing, with its careful angles and deliberate waste, does not fit the equation. The numbers are blunt. Quarter sawing a log produces 20 to 30% less usable lumber than flat sawing. For every 100 logs, that is the difference between 80 boards and 100. a loss that multiplies across millions of logs and billions of dollars. The North American hardwood market alone is valued at around $40 billion each year. In that economy, the extra yield from flat sawing is not just a preference, it is an imperative. Sawmills designed for volume can process flat sawn boards 30% faster, feeding the supply chain at a pace that matches demand from construction, furniture, and flooring manufacturers. The workflow transforms. Logs are oriented for speed, not stability. Saw blades run hotter and longer with fewer stops to reorient the wood. Each minute saved is another fraction of a cent squeezed from the raw material. Industry analytics from the Hardwood Market Report and the Forest Products Association of Canada confirm that mills running in quarter saw mode see profit margins drop by 4 to 6 percentage points. The penalty comes from both ends: fewer boards per log and higher labor and maintenance costs. A 30-inch log, flat sawn, yields about 12 board feet of lumber. Quarter sawn, it gives only 8 or 9. That gap, repeated across an entire year's production, becomes a chasm no accountant can ignore. The logic ripples outward. Retailers, pressed by cost and throughput, fill their aisles with flat sawn stock. Builders and manufacturers learn to expect movement, cupping, and twist as normal. The supply chain loops back on itself, creating a cycle where instability is not a flaw to be fixed, but a baseline to be managed. When flat sawn boards warp, the solution is not to change the cut, but to invent new products: engineered flooring, MDF, laminated panels, each promising to solve the problem that the industry itself created by abandoning quarter sawing. The hidden cost is not just in the waste, it is in the normalization of failure. 10 to 20% of flat sawn lumber delivered to big box stores is returned or discounted because it is already warped on the shelf. That is over 1 million labor hours lost each year in the United States alone, flattening or discarding boards that never should have failed. The market absorbs the inefficiency, passing the cost down the line, while the original solution, cutting boards with the grain, remains sidelined by the arithmetic of yield. The story is not one of technological progress, but of economic triage. The industry did not forget how to make wood stable. It chose, again and again, to make more boards instead. Each time a builder rejects a warped board, the cost ripples far beyond the lumberyard. Industry surveys from the National Association of Home Builders report that 10 to 20% of flat sawn lumber arriving at job sites is either returned or heavily discounted because it is already twisted, cupped, or bowed. That figure translates into over 1 million wasted labor hours every year in the United States. Time spent straightening, sorting, or discarding material that never should have failed. The economic loss is quietly absorbed, passed down the supply chain, and ultimately paid by homeowners and small builders who expect stability but receive disappointment as standard. The story doesn't end with wasted wood. As flat sawn boards fail, the market responds not by changing the cut, but by inventing new products to mask the problem. Engineered wood, plywood, MDF, and laminated panels flood the aisles, each promising to deliver flatness where solid boards cannot. But these solutions come with their own price. The adhesives holding them together are often urea formaldehyde resins, a chemical the International Agency for Research on Cancer classifies as a Group 1 carcinogen. Indoor air quality studies routinely find higher formaldehyde emissions in homes with engineered flooring and cabinetry, linking the rise of these substitutes to increased respiratory complaints and long-term health risks. For restoration builders, the irony is bitter. The knowledge that once kept boards flat has been sidelined, replaced by shortcuts that create new hazards. The cycle of waste, chemical dependence, and hidden expense is not a technical inevitability. It is the fallout of an economic choice, one that values volume over longevity and leaves the true cost scattered across work sites, landfills, and living rooms. Across the country, a handful of woodworkers, sawyers, and educators have refused to let quarter sawing vanish into obscurity. In the back rooms of specialty mills and the workshops of luthiers, the old method is not a living practice, one that's still taught, argued over, and defended. Chris Schwartz, founder of Lost Art Press, has made it his mission to revive this knowledge for a new generation. His books and classes lay out, in plain language, why the angle of the cut determines whether a board will stay flat or betray its maker. For Schwartz and his peers, quarter sawing is not nostalgia. It's a hard-won lesson in physics and patience, tested every time a piece of furniture survives its first winter without splitting. Luthiers, too, have never abandoned the principle. The soundboard of a violin or guitar demands quarter-sawn spruce, not out of tradition, but from necessity. The stability of the grain is the difference between music and silence, between an instrument that sings for a century and one that warps into silence. Makers like Dana Bourgeois and the teams at Martin and Taylor Guitars still specify quarter-sawn stock for every top, citing the same reason medieval shipwrights and cathedral builders once did: the wood must not move. Specialty sawyers such as Hearn Hardwoods in Pennsylvania and Gobi Walnut in Oregon continue to run their saws at the slow, deliberate pace quarter sawing requires. Their clients are not just luthiers and conservators, but builders and craftspeople who have learned through failure and frustration that the old method still delivers what the modern aisle cannot. In their hands, the technique remains teachable, repeatable, and alive, a quiet rebellion against the logic of yield, and proof that the secret was never lost, only buried. The floor of the White House's ground floor hallway, laid in 1952, endures as a silent testament to quarter-sawn wood's promise. In the decades since its installation, the boards have held their line: no cupping, no gapping, no restless movement, betraying the seasons outside. The original contract, archived by the White House Historical Association, called for quarter-sawn white oak, 2 inches thick, sourced from the Appalachian forests. A photograph from that summer captures the new floor's surface, each plank alive with the shimmering ray flecks that only this method reveals. 70 years of foot traffic, state dinners, and humid Washington summers have left the grain as true as the day it was set. Beyond the corridors of power, conservators at museums rely on quarter-sawn lumber for reasons that go beyond tradition. At the Victoria and Albert Museum, a pair of 17th century cabinets underwent microscopic analysis as part of a conservation survey. The grain revealed the telltale parallel bands of early and late wood, unmistakable evidence of quarter-sawn oak. The cabinets, acquired from the London Guild of Carvers, have survived centuries without twist or split, a stability matched in the Ingetorp's tithe barn, where portable microscopy confirmed quarter-sawn ribs in a 13th century Swedish structure. Each artifact, whether in a presidential residence or a museum's climate-controlled vault, anchors the physical reality of quarter sawing. These surviving objects do not argue or persuade. They simply persist, bearing witness to a method that solved the problem of movement not with chemicals or engineering, but with a single, deliberate cut. Today, flat-sawn boards bend and twist across hardware aisles, while quarter-sawn timber, once standard in cathedrals and heirloom furniture, survives as a rarity. The physics of wood hasn't changed, only our priorities have. When industry profits from instability, durability becomes an afterthought. The real secret isn't how to stop wood from warping. It's why we ever accepted that it was normal. What will we choose to remember, and what will we forget?